Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Lost Years of Merlin series. We are on book 3 called The Fires of Merlin, and we are on chapter 16 called Dreams Yet Unhatched. In the last chapter, Halia and Aramon and Merlin all were like running together as deer people, and it was chill until Halia bit down on a rock and she hurt her tooth, but she was like, no, I don't want anybody to fix it for me because Merlin's a man and they're dangerous, but she did, and so now they're growing their trust a little bit more, so that's cool. But here we are in chapter 16 called Dreams Yet Unhatched. Stepping cautiously, we approached the bank of the rushing river. Rapids slapped and pounded. Strands of mist, tinted red from the setting sun, wound around our legs, curling like vaporous ropes. The soil grew soft and slippery under my feet and the others' hooves. At the lip of the bank, I paused to watch Aramon and Halia descend. Despite the unstable ground, they moved as gracefully as a pair of dewdrops rolling down the petal of a flower. Unlike them, I stood upright and vertical, a young man, half human, half Chiron. 2 legs felt so narrow, so unsteady. Even as I curled my fingers, feeling their delicacy, I missed my own hooves. And still more, I missed my own magic. Thanks to Aramon's gift, I had, at least briefly, forgotten the emptiness in my chest. Change back! Yes, now. I turned to run along the edge of the bank. When I saw Aramon suddenly halt, his antlered head erect, Halia too froze, the fur on her back bristling. Like them, I stood motionless. For through the shredding mist, I could now see the edges of the opposite bank, and the scene of slaughter that scarred it. The boulders that I remembered no longer marked this place, only broken shells, their reeking innards clotted with blood. In a flash, I comprehended that they had never been boulders at all. They had been eggs. Dragon eggs. Strewn across the muddy shore, the broken remains of the eggs lay in ghastly heaps. I spotted a section of throat hacked brutally, and a ragged wing streaked with scarlet and green. Except for the few strips of flesh that fluttered in the spray, everything seemed frozen in the moment of death. No wolves had dragged away these carcasses. No vulture had carried off the meaty fragments still glistening with newborn scales. At once, I knew why. For over the whole scene hung something as potent as the fetid odor of rotting flesh, the possibility that Valdirk himself might appear at any moment. I clambered down the bank to join the others. Mud tugged at my boots, while a growing dread tugged at my heart. As we stepped into the shallows, frigid water slapped against our legs, yet nothing chilled so much as the devastation before us. At least, I told myself, they were only dragons, destroyed before they could do the same to anyone else. Even so, Aramon's words still nagged at me. The stag bounded up the opposite bank, then veered sharply to the left. Forehoof raised, he bent over something, studying intently. As fast as I could, I scrambled up behind him. Below his hoof, I spied a slight indentation in the soil stained dark orange from blood. All at once, I realized that it was a footprint, the footprint of a man. Here, I felt certain, was the proof that Arnalda had used to turn the dragon's wrath away from the dwarves and toward me. Cautiously, Halia approached. She lowered her head to sniff the print, her nose almost touching it. She glanced at me, the old mistrust back in her eyes. Working her tongue, she spat out the leaf that I had given her. Then, her voice barely audible above the river, she spoke. This man, whoever he is, has brought much pain. And Valdirk will bring even more, added Aramon grimly, unless we are successful. Yet our time dwindles. Already the sun is setting on this day. Sadly, I shook my head. This print looks so much like my own. Halia snorted. All men's footprints look alike, heavy and clumsy. Aramon struck the mud with his hoof. Not so, my sister. See here? The edge of the heel is blunted, but with a sharp edge. Not in the normal rounded way caused by walking on turf or even hard floors. Halia turned toward one of my own footprints. After a long pause, she admitted, There is, I suppose, a difference. Hesitantly, she glanced at me once again. I'm sorry, It's all right, I replied. Say no more. Facing Aramon, I asked, So what does the shape of that heel tell you? That it was cut, over time, by something jagged. Perhaps this person lives in some sort of cave lined with rough stones, or in a maze of tunnels under the ground. Arnalda lives in a realm of tunnels, I mused. Yet she doesn't wear a man's boots. Besides, why would she ever attack Valdir's young, knowing it might bring his wrath down on her people? Slowly I exhaled. It doesn't make sense. Halia's ears twisted. There is another possibility. This person, this man, could have left the print on purpose, trying to trick us somehow. Possibly, acknowledged the stag. Man can sometimes be deceitful, she finished. His antlers tilted to one side. Are you saying a deer is never deceitful? Would you never try to trick an enemy? The doe straightened her neck. Only to defend myself. She glanced at the nearest of the heaps, swathed in mist. Or, one day, my young. I strode over to the demolished egg. Kicking aside a piece of shell, I froze. Before me laid a severed arm, its claws extended like fingers. Though the arm's shape was not much different from my own, it was at least twice the size. Its underside bore a crest of iridescent purple scales. Its wrist seemed as delicate as the neck of a swan. The claws seemed to be reaching, groping for something just beyond their grasp. Something about this lifeless arm made me want to touch it, with my own hands, my own fingers. I kneeled and stroked its length. The arm felt soft despite the row of scales, almost like the chubby leg of a newborn baby. Not long ago it had been alive, and young, and innocent. At last I understood the full horror of this tragedy. No life, no creature, no future deserved to be wasted like this, murdered like this. No wonder Valdir's rage knew no bounds. To myself I recited the lines from Tuatha's prophecy. By anger unending and power unmatched, the dragon avenges his dreams yet unhatched. For when he awakens to find those dreams lost, revenge shall he covet, regardless the cost. Suddenly, Aramon jerked his head, his rack spraying drops of water. His body and Halia stiffened as one. They were sensing something, feeling something that eluded me completely. Then I heard a sound, deep and rasping, like a distant volcano erupting. It came from somewhere far beyond the river, yet it grew steadily louder. A wind stirred. The air felt almost imperceptibly warmer. I picked up the faint scent of smoke. All at once, an enormous shadow darkened the reddening mist. "The dragon!" cried Aramon. "Run!" The two deer scattered, bounding into the mist, while I stumbled over to the slick bank. The sound of flying thunder rent the air as the shadow passed over again. Terrified, I thought, of changing back into a deer myself, when suddenly I slipped in the mud, losing my balance. In a whirl, I rolled down to the river's edge. Frigid water coursed over my legs as well as my sword. Breathless, I regained my feet and dashed across the shallows. On a steep section of the far bank, I spied an overhang. A thick curtain of grasses, soaked from spray, dangled over the edge. Yet behind the grasses loomed a dark place where the river had washed away the soil. A cavern! Even as the sound above me swelled into a roar, I threw myself into the cavern, rolling over and over on the mud until I bumped into the arching wall of the bank. For a moment I lay in the darkness, panting. Feeling the chill of the river, I sat up and pulled my knees to my chest. As I gazed through the dripping curtain of grasses, I felt a touch of satisfaction. I had eluded Faldir. Only temporarily, of course. Yet even delaying the inevitable by a handful of days seemed to cause enough for pride. Listening to the rushing torrent outside, I felt grateful for the safety of this cavern. It was cramped and smelled rancid somehow. Yet who could ask for a better hiding place? Then, without warning, something brushed against my leg. Okay, my friends, so that was chapter 16, and tomorrow we will read chapter 17 called Powerless. So please join me tomorrow, and I will see you then. Have a wonderful night. Bye.